Call to order, St. Joseph City Council of December 5th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So are you going to bring that out tonight? What's that? Are you going to bring that out tonight?
Sorry. Teresa, I had shorter legs.
Are these on? Are these on? They are. Okay. Well, the green thing is not working. They're not working. Okay. Item 2, public comments. Anybody wishing to speak to the city? There you go. Speak to the city council, please step to the podium. Seeing no one come forth, I'll look at item 3, approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda. Any changes or actions? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion does carry. Item 4, consent agenda.
I'll move.
Second.
Motion and second on the consent agenda. Any questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, public hearing. Lori, you want to?
Yes, so I do have a
Little-
presentation to kind of go through a little PowerPoint, kind of the overview of the budget. Not sure, is my mic picking up? Okay. So a little overview of the budget. And then once I'm done, we can take public comment on the
Okay.
public hearing.
Very good.
Okay. So tonight we have the 2023 proposed budget, and by law, we have to hold a truth and taxation hearing. This hearing is called. When you set the preliminary budget back in September, you set December 5th at 6 p.m. for the truth and taxation hearing, and that was put on notices that property owners have received in November. So just a quick overview of the budget process that Minnesota state legislatures do set the tax rates for a state tax rate, and then other jurisdictions such as city, county, school district, and some special districts have their own levy process that they follow under state statutes. One of the things that the state legislature does also establish is a homestead credit and what that amount is and who qualifies for those. Those homestead credits are a reduction in the your tax capacity, which is really your market value of your homes. So those are set based on your valuations. The state also tells us what we need to do for truth and taxation. Back in May and June, the Stearns County assessor, who we contract to value our properties here for the taxing purposes, they held what's called the Board of Appeals, or the open book meetings back in that time. Those set your valuations going into your 2023 property taxes. So I am aware that residential properties here specifically in the city of St. Joseph and really around the state have increased significantly. The time when you could have appealed those market values was back in May and April. So keep that in mind as we go into 2023. In March or so, residents, property owners will receive a statement saying what their valuation is going to be for 2024. Keep those meeting dates around if you would like to try to appeal what those are. So that is your opportunity, property owner's opportunity at that time. A couple other dates: July 31st, the state certifies local government aid, which helps supplement our general fund activities. September 30th, the council has to adopt the preliminary tax levy and budget, and we set ours on September 19th. We also set the truth and tax hearing dates, which is tonight. In the middle of November, the county will send out a notice of property taxes. Those are based on the preliminary levy and budget. The city has the opportunity, and actually all the taxing jurisdictions have the opportunity to change those levies by December 28th before they establish the final. They can be reduced. They cannot be increased unless there's an extreme circumstance that comes up. And just to keep in mind, if property owners should check to make sure that if they're living in a property, that they have the homestead declaration on their property taxes. If they do not, they have till December 15th to file that with the Stearns County. And again, December 28th is the last day that the council can certify the final levy and budget. So here in the city of St. Joseph, we began budget process, some discussions back in May. We've talked about capital projects, we talked about staffing levels, dues and memberships. I had Northland Securities help me with a debt management study and present to the council. And we talked about like what overall goals the council had for the budget. September 19th, we set the preliminary. Continued discussions here in the fall, looking at different levies, fees, different things that supplement the budget. So we did have a workshop in November 22nd that we went through things pretty thoroughly again. And here we are tonight for the public hearing. We will also have the public hearing for the fee schedule tonight. Again, we must adopt by December 28th. So it is an overview for the 2023 budget. Some changes from 2022 to 2023. There are 3 full-time staffing positions that are part of the reason for the increase in the budget. So the mechanic was hired in July, so in 2022 we only had half a year budget for that position. Administrative assistant was added in September, and we have a full-time police officer budget in 2023. We have a part-time police officer that is retiring, and so we're looking to replace that with full-time hours. We also added back the planning intern for the summer of next summer. We did gap a year just because we didn't really have a good project for that intern this last year. The budget assumes the implementation of the compensation study. Plus a general increase of 3% on January 1st of 2023. And staff who have step increases will be considered for those step increases upon their anniversary of their position. So that is included in the budget. So overall, we have 30 full-time staff budgeted and 1 part-time staff. That would be our rec director is at a part-time. And then we have, some of those seasonals and the intern. Also included in the budget is an increase in the fire stipend for their calls from $16 to $17 per hour, and also an increase in the salaries for the chief and assistant fire chief. Operations, we talked about the dues and memberships a couple times, and we're continuing the current memberships into 2023. Consultant contracts are not up for RFP, so we're continuing with the current consultants that we have. The property tax sharing with the St. Joseph Township, that's the annexation that took place in 2019. We scaled back tax sharing with them for over a 5-year period that we remit back to them some of the taxes to help them manage that decrease in the levy that are the property taxes that they're receiving. So that was agreed upon at the time with the annexation. And then one of the things in the operation is the seal coating and crack filling budget. We do have some money set aside that we've been building up in that program. And so there was a little bit of a reduction in the seal coating budget for 2023, but again, it's because we have a fund available there for what Ryan needs to do for this next year. Overall, supplies, utilities, fuel, probably like everybody, even personally, are experiencing increases there. The city is also, so we had to account for some inflation in those line items. And then also the fire service. Well, we annexed part of the St. Joseph Township. We're increasing the fire service costs that the city is responsible for. And that was over a 5-year period that we're gaining in the percentage that we're covering in that fire contract. So you would see an increase in that fire service contribution this year. I'm not going to read all of these, but just an idea of the capital equipment that's budgeted for 2023. We have 2 equipment certificates that the city issues to help level out the levee from spikes and valleys each year. And that helps us purchase these, some of the larger equipment that's really hard to put money aside each year for. So in 2023, there is another equipment certificate that is due to be issued that will help pay for some of these larger items, say like the replacement of the front end loader and the skid steer replacement, plows. Those things are bigger dollar items, and it kind of helps us get through those bigger purchases. Capital improvements that are planned for 2023. We have a permanent generator scheduled to go at the Ridgewood Lift Station. We're looking at right-of-way acquisition for the Elm Street extension. And we'll continue with the capital campaign and designing of the community center / YMCA. And then for the street overlay project, you will have the feasibility report contract later on the agenda tonight. But the project areas that we're looking at, Northland Plat 4 and 5, Losos 3 and 4, part of Ash Street. The First Street extension is out in the new industrial park area. Some boulevard repairs at Iris Lane, and then a 3rd phase of the downtown alleys near the post office. There's a lot of numbers here, just sorting out where the budget is. This is just the general fund, and it includes, I separate these funds out when you look at the line items in the finance system. But overall, the general fund, these are the numbers. We're proposing to actually decrease overall in the general fund, but that's a little bit deceiving because we have money set aside. Like Fund 104 is the ARPA money for COVID. So we have a couple years that we have to use that money. We have a couple projects that we do have planned in 2023, but we spent more in 2024, so it would show a little bit of reduction there. Similar, we had some of the capital campaign money budgeted in Fund 390, and now that's being wrapped into the project of the capital campaign. So that was $400,000 in itself in the capital budget. So it's a little deceiving when we look at the funds together, just because of some of those one-time projects kind of come into play and skew things a little bit. Probably the number to focus on, just to look at the general fund difference, would really be in the wages and benefits. The city is a service industry, and over 75% of our budget is salaries and wages benefits. And you can see that it's proposed to go up almost $500,000, and that is due to adding those 3 staff, the staffing that we talked about, implementing the compensation study, new contracts with our bargaining units, proposing those. So overall, it kind of encompasses all of those things. This is just a summary of all the other funds, the other governmental funds that are out there. I'm not going to go through each of them, but it is also in your agenda packet, that summary. In the enterprise funds, we have 5 enterprise funds that we operate, and we operate these similar to a business where fees are to cover the costs plus depreciation of these enterprise funds. And when we get to the fee schedule, we'll kind of go through that a little bit more on how what we're proposing for those fees to cover the budget operations that we're proposing there. The effect of the levy and the budget basically overall on the rate or the taxpayers here in the city. The net tax capacity I mentioned earlier. Across the state of Minnesota, I think the average was right around 19% that market values went up in property values. Here in St. Joseph, we're seeing just under 17% increase in the property values. What that means is if we, with our levy applying to that increased market value, is individual property owners would see an increase in their taxes, even though our tax rate is proposed to stay about the same. Just the way the formula works. That is not unique to the city of St. Joseph. That is across the board around the state of Minnesota. Several employees work in different cities, different counties, live in different cities and counties, and we're all seeing the same thing in our respective areas as well. And the state had published that as well, that has been a huge impact for this year. The general levy is proposed to increase from 2 million, just over 2 million up to 2.5 million. And the debt levy actually would show a decrease there. I put that in orange, the 829,000, and that's because we paid off 2 debts early. So from the preliminary levy till now, we're actually able to reduce that debt levy a little bit. So overall, the tax statements said our tax rate would be 61.75%, and we're able to bring it down to 61.05%. And again, the main reason is because we paid off those 2 debts early. Overall in the budget, we would see a decrease in the budget, but again, it includes all these funds where it's kind of like one-time projects that come into play, so it's a little bit skewed when you just look at that number. I put a little summary in here of a couple homes, trying to show the fact of what this tax capacity, the net tax capacity, the market value has on these homes. So you can see, I think the homes that I had randomly selected didn't have significant changes to their properties. So no big additions, garages, that sort of thing were added to the properties. It's simply just the change in the market value that is following the state formula that the assessor had applied to these properties. And when you get an increase in your market value, you're going to get a decrease in that homestead credit. It's just the way the formula works by the state statute. So you see pretty significant decrease in that homestead credit, which is also increasing the property taxes then. So you can see the dollar amounts here, and this is just the city portion of what the proposed increase will be for, 3 average homes here in the city. And then I did a summary of what all the taxing jurisdictions are here for a resident here in the city of St. Joseph. Stearns County is actually proposing reducing their tax rate. The others are roughly about the same, and you can see that ours is about a 0.5% decrease. Even with that, if a property like that $200,000 home would stay the same $200,000 value, that resident would see a reduction in their property taxes. But again, most people are seeing an increase in the market value simply by the formula that the assessor had to apply. And so they're actually seeing an increase likely on their taxes, even though the tax rates are going down across the board. A little summary of where we're at compared to the area cities. The other cities are holding their truth and taxation, actually a couple of them here tonight. And you can see we're right about average when you average all the cities out. A little bit higher than some, a little lower than others. So this is kind of where we fall. And then I just wanted to clarify that the link for ClearGov, which will give you an opportunity to go online and look at numbers, how you see fit with different budgets, general fund, any of the fire fund if you want, any of them, a little narrative, what's going on in each of the departments can be found at that ClearGov site. There is a link on our website too under finance and budget. So with that, we'll open up to questions and comments.
Counselors?
Just I'm sure it's just a typo, but on the back page, that's the revenue is the 2023, correct? Just wanted to make sure.
Yes, and on that back, I didn't have this split out. The fire fund is a special revenue fund, so I missed that on there. My presentation did have that, that split out.
Okay,
But yes, you are correct. Sorry about that.
no worries, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
I'll start. So we're gonna budget for an intern in 2023 because we have a project. What is that project?
I would say that mostly it's tied to help over the summer and the permitting that transpires. So I don't think we have a project specifically picked out, but we do have permitting work that often the intern will assist with, just getting the administrative stuff out the door and that.
Well, this year might have been the exception because we had all the roof and hail and everything damaged. Is this like a clerical position more than an intern?
I would say that it's part clerical, but we also want to provide value to that intern, so we will find a project for them to do. I just don't have that specific project at the.
And I get that, but we're talking about, again, cost of the budget with a project, and we don't have a project identified. So if it comes to that date, do we have to hire an intern, or can we just say, we don't have a project?
We do have, actually, I haven't talked to Nate about this too, this just came up. We are looking at stormwater, allocating some of the stormwater fees to some of the annexed areas or currently that are not being billed. And speaking with SEH, they may have an intern that will help us with determining billable acres. But our intern on our end can also help in stormwater, looking at from a planning perspective, looking at that stormwater management. They have to be mindful of all those plans as well. So I haven't talked to Nate about it yet, but
What is
I was going to propose that they could help with
what's the
analyzing
cost?
that.
What's in the budget for that?
It's just under 5,000.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna keep going. I have a difficult time if it's clerical, and besides, interns take a while to get up to speed before they can do anything. No offense intended to interns, but, so what have we built in for recession and inflation? Or, because I don't see it being over. And I know you mentioned that you've allocated for it, but I'm just kinda curious how you've allocated for it.
We look at it actually pretty detailed, kind of looking at where we are at, what pricing that we are seeing at the time when we look at some of the, like electricity, gas, and so we would have looked at that in May, June timeframe. We also would reach out to, say, like XL Energy, what are you proposing for your rates? And we tried to incorporate that in there, so I can't say it's like 1% from, because it's, individually, we look at things, so.
Okay, I just wanna make sure we're covered, cause I don't see that going down further, you know.
In some supplies, it's
2023
what
and
department
stuff.
heads had gathered from talking to their suppliers and that sort of thing too, so it's across the board different.
Okay, no, very good. Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, what's the cost of the LELS contract? Or, suppose it's not ratified yet, but the contract that's on the table.
So we're gonna talk about that later, like item, ba-ba-dee-ba-dee-ba.
8.
Okay, we can talk
Item-
about it, we can
item
talk
eight.
about it later.
Yeah,
that okay?
I do have the
Yeah,
number.
I'm just looking for a number.
I do have the
to-
number in
Yeah.
the agenda, I can
Right.
pull it out, I don't have it right here in front of me.
Okay. So that's coming on item 8. So property tax township, 2025, are they completely the same as at that point? City tax rate? Or how does that? what is it?
No,
what-
it's
what-
what we have to pay back to the township. So there's like a property tax sharing, so we
Yep.
looked at what the taxes were at that time, and we paid 80%, 60%, whatever back to them of that tax at that time. The properties that were annexed, commercial and industrial, had to increase their taxes over 5 years. It's like 6.6% each year to get their tax rate up to the same as the city tax rate. The residential, so we have a separate rate for rural residential, and theirs is adjusted based on what the urban tax rate does, like the 61.05%, whatever the city's up and down, there's a formula we have to apply, and that's what gets applied to the rural residential. So they would stay a rural rate, which is around 22% right now. They'll stay that unless they connect to water and sewer.
Okay. I knew there was a difference. I just wasn't
Yeah.
sure if they're catching up or they stay until we
No,
connect.
their,
and all
their
this-
fluctuation
until they
is
get
based on the
utilities.
city.
Until they get utilities, right? Okay.
Correct.
Is it utilities or they modify their structure or something like that? I thought there was, anyway, no big deal. Okay, I got it. So the fire contract is getting extended again, like later on or something, or maybe it didn't, it condensed.
Number 12.
Oh, okay.
12 is
We can wait. She brought it up, so I'll wait till
Yeah.
12 then. That's fine.
I was gonna wait for 2.
Yeah, that's fine. In the capital outlay, there's boutique hotel location in the capital outlay. What's that?
Continuing searching that, see if we can narrow down.
But are we allocating money into the capital improvement to do research?
Not really, I think
actually-
it's just continuing the talks that we've been doing. So no additional money to
Okay.
contract services or anything like that. It's just continuing those discussions, because that was a initiative from the E EDA.
Yep, oh, absolutely, I get it, I just wanna make sure, are we allocating money for a specific purpose for?
No, I think it's just
Okay.
continuing, trying to narrow down that site.
Okay, and the softball roof, re-roof, that whole building needs a structure, correct, not just the roof? Or have we decided on what we're doing there?
No, we went out with I went out with Mike Wallen, our building official, and we went through it. It does have quite a bit of life left in it. It's worth
Okay.
re-roofing.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good, thank you. And for the engineer, the Iris Lane Boulevard, is that the flopping over the, like,
I think that's
street?
that storm
Is it,
that's sinking down.
Yep.
Yeah, the storm sewer that's moved the road a bit.
oh, okay. That's, everything's moving south or east or west, whatever, okay, I get that, okay. That's what I thought it was, I just wanted to make sure. And the last question I have is this ClearGov thing, who's responsible for that? Is it us? No, I'm not trying to point fingers, I just know that the link was bad.
Well,
And-
yeah, and it was my misunderstanding of getting that up there, so I was waiting for replies from them, so it's on me.
No, just a process thing, because
Yep.
once you published it, I went and looked, and then Dale chimed in as well, so, okay.
Yep, that was on me.
Okay, no big deal. Yeah, we're gonna do that next. Okay, so those are my questions. Anybody else? Okay, so those are my questions. That being said, we're gonna open the public hearing, and anybody wishing to speak to council on this, truth and taxation, please come to the podium, name and address, and we'll take your concerns.
You all know me, I'm Dick Dolphin, 319 East Minnesota Street. My question to the city council is, I know there was a substantial increase in home valuation. Why can the county continue to operate at 18%? School district can continue to operate at 19%, and the city wants to take 33%. What more am I gonna get for 33% in the year of 2023 that I didn't get in 2022? My proposed amount going up for the city of St. Joe this year is $407. That's just the city. My total package is over $700. What?
It's a public hearing, and we
Okay,
take it,
all right.
we take it into consideration, and we'll have staff and everybody else directed, but we understand your concern. I mean,
It's a pretty sizable increase.
thank you, Dick. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we're gonna close the public hearing and then move into consideration for, I don't know, approval of the budget. I have, just, again, for those of you that aren't aware, Kevin's not here tonight because his mother passed away, and so condolences to Kevin, and he and I have talked. As a courtesy, I'd like to table this till he can come back.
Second.
I'd like to table it till the next meeting, the 19th.
Yeah.
Okay, motion and second to table any passage of the final budget. Motion and second to table. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. we can still have discussion on it, but we won't be passing anything on the budget. And same with the other items, you know, we can still talk about those things, but, and I'm not saying anything will change, but at the same time, I think these are kind of the really important, this is one of the most important items of the year that we go through, and I want Kevin a chance to talk to staff and Jeff and whoever else that.
I
so
would
if-
like to move all the consideration items till our next meeting.
All of them?
All of them. They're all monetary issues.
So would we do this for anybody else that would be gone? And I'm understanding that my sympathies are with Kevin also, but if
Well,
any of us, if mayor was gone or if you were gone, would we do the same? I mean, there's enough to vote here. I can understand with one, but with all of them?
Yeah, I kind of want to go through each one still, and then we can discuss if that's how you want to go, but I'm
Yeah.
in agreement with Kelly, I'd still rather go down to discuss what we need, because I think there's some that we still can agree on.
And we could still vote on.
Correct.
We can vote or table each time and just discuss, so. I mean, I don't have a problem either way, and we have done that before, where we tabled, not that many, but
Right.
Correct.
single items 1 and 2, so. So, I don't have a second on the table, Bob, so we're gonna go down one by one. We're gonna start by number 6, adopting fee schedule.
Fee schedule is a separate public hearing too, so
Yep,
we
I
won't
know.
do that.
Yep, so do you wanna go over anything first, or you wanna just open the public hearing?
I do have more to my presentation.
I knew you would.
Can we link back to, okay. So just, kind of just a general overview of the changes in the proposed fee schedule. There's some labor rate changes, and that's based on the proposed final budget numbers for 2023. We added distillery license fees, with the new ordinance that was, adopted this year. Special, event permit, we, I don't know if that was a new ordinance. I don't know if that's correct in my presentation there, but we do have a special event, permit process. And so we added, a fee just for that special event based on the ordinance. We added license fees for cannabinoid, licenses. And that's again based on new ordinance that is, for your consideration actually tonight. And then there's some other basic fees that I do have described in my agenda item that if you have questions on, we can go through, but I don't have them split out here. And then utility rates, we hired Waterworth to help us with water sewer financial modeling. So the rates assume implementation from that modeling, and we'll talk a little bit more here in the upcoming slides. So I split out the water rates. This is kind of a lot of numbers on here, but basically the first 2 columns are a single-family home, the middle 2 columns would be a commercial user, and the last 2 columns would be a multifamily user. And I just randomly took a 60-unit apartment. And the rates that are proposed, we're proposing to change the line charge or the fixed charge to a, based on the meter size. A single-family user, it'll be a 1-for-1 charge, but larger meters will have a multiplier in there. So instead of getting that 60-unit apartment getting 60 base units, they will have, they have a 2-inch meter, and so they'll have the base fee times whatever the multiplier as set by the American Water Works Association. So it's a standard that's used through engineering models that's adopted nationally. So they would have that charge on there. You can see that their water and sewer rates are proposed to go down, and that is because the 60-unit charge really didn't equate exactly to a 2-inch meter. Contrary, on the commercial user, they were getting 1-unit charge for their commercial building. They maybe have a 1.5-inch water meter in my example here. They will have a multiplier on there for that 1-inch meter based again on that AWWA standard. And they will see an increase in those meter charges because they're currently getting 1 unit, yet they are using 60,000 gallons and they need a larger capacity, hence why they have a larger water meter on their building. So overall, the only rates that are proposed to change are water, sewer, and refuse recycling. The refuse and recycling is based on the contract we have. We're going into our 3rd year of a 3-year contract with Republic Services. So those fees are based on those contract prices. I am proposing no increases in stormwater and streetlight utility simply because we're increasing other areas, and with the levy changes, we have a little bit of reserves in both of those funds that I think those funds will sustain themselves for this year. Eventually, we'll have to look at, do we need to increase those rates? But right now, we have enough reserves. And so I think to offset some of the other increases that especially a resident, single-family resident might experience, it kind of softens those increases in a different way that we can, where we have reserves, ability to do so. This is really hard to see. I had the area cities, some of them responded, some of them have not. So I put 2022 rates where I did not receive a response, but you can see just on a single family user, the comparison in the utility rates. I know Sauk Rapids is, because they're dealing with a couple different things. One, the St. Cloud sewer, but they're dealing with some PFAS in their water system, and a couple other areas where they know they need to do some significant increases where they have not increased for a few years. So they're looking at like 10% increases on their rates over a couple years to try to catch up to some of these new regulations and issues that they're facing. So a summary of just that comparison. And again, the fee schedule is linked on our website too, so if people have further questions, want to look at details, it's also in your council packet tonight. So I don't know if there's specific questions, comments for the public hearing.
Thank you, Lori. With that, we'll open the public comments on the proposed fee schedule. Anybody wishing to comment on the fee schedule as proposed, please step to the podium and the council will listen. Seeing no one come forward, we will close the public comment period. And then councilors' questions or concerns.
It says that we posted in St. Cloud, do we also, I know on our website, do we also put it in the newsletter?
No, not to
Should we
the link.
not? I mean, we should, it's for the
We put it in our newsletter when the fees will change, which would go into the March newsletter. We do put a summary in there on the utility rates.
Mhm.
We haven't done anything in the newsletter.
Why do we do
We
St.
publish the public hearing is tonight. We have to publish that, but
Right. Why do we do it in the St. Cloud then?
because that's our official newspaper that we designated. The council actually makes that designation every January.
And why did we pick St. Cloud? Why wouldn't it be the
It's
St.
because
Joe?
the St. Joseph News Leader only publishes every 2 weeks, and there's many times where we can't make deadlines that are
Okay.
required for public hearings, so
Okay.
that is why we chose St. Cloud.
Been through there.
So I have a question about the refuse contract. Is that a new negotiated contract, or are we negotiating a new contract?
We will, later this year, later in 2023, we will be.
Okay.
The contract goes through the December 31st, 2023.
But the 24, the increase is part of the current contract then? We're increasing from 20 to 24? I thought. Right?
And it's
Is
the
that-
3rd year of the contract too, correct?
Mhm.
Right, but is that what the increase in the contract's, okay. I just want to
The
make sure
the
that-
contract increase is for 2023, and that's, the rates reflect 2023.
Okay. And then we start another RFP process for that, okay. very good.
Correct.
Thank you. Counselors?
Yeah, question here.
Yeah, Bob.
On a hypothetical water bill, say $300 every 2 months. Okay, majority of that water bill is its fees, not water, and I mean, sewer and water are the same. And you noted here it's a fixed rate of 24 and it's going up to 25. Could you explain that to me, fixed rate?
Yeah, so that's where I was talking, that meter charge. So we have to cover, we have to operate the system that when you go turn on your water faucet, that there's water there for you and it's been treated. So we call those our fixed costs, that we have to have a system in place to service whoever wants to use it based on their capacity of usage. Similarly, when you flush your toilet, you want it to be able to go and be treated and go to the plant. And so we have to have that infrastructure in place in order to cover those costs. So it's the basic fixed costs of operating the system and have it in place for somebody to use it,
Okay, so that
whether they
fixed,
want to or not.
that fixed rate isn't a line item then?
It is, it's called a line charge right now on your
Okay.
utility bill.
Okay,
So what's called a line charge is really that fixed rate. And again, it's just basic costs of operating. of having-
curious about the fixed rate, but it equates to the line charge?
Correct, it is.
Okay. All right.
Other questions or concerns? Yes, Jeff?
Just a note, Lori wasn't updated when we pulled the cannabinoid item off the agenda, so it is on the fee list, but we don't actually have an item on the agenda establishing it, so that would be one that would be held until actually we've passed the ordinance.
Amendment?
Yeah,
Or- okay.
so just a clarification. We decided not to be this meeting because of the length of the agenda, and also there's been some ordinances passed by other communities, and we wanted to kind of analyze those a little bit before we came up with our final recommendation, so
Sure.
that's why.
It's
Yeah,
move or table?
I'm good.
Move or table?
Yeah, I move to adopt the 2023 fee schedule ordinance 2022-11, with rates being January 1st.
A second.
Motion and second, adopting the, and that would be amending the fee schedule ordinance 2022-011. Questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion prevails 3-1. And then
I will-
summary publication.
Yeah, I'll move to adopt the resolution 2022-60 summary publication of the revised ordinance.
A second.
Motion and second, resolution 2022-60 summary publication. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Motion prevails 3-1. Is that for the end of your presentation, sir? All right. Now we're looking at, and we had this, we talked about this, didn't we, at the, work session, right? Okay. So who wants to?
I'll take this one.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
All right. Well, I guess this is, council's being asked to, amending the salary scale to make it consistent with the recent study that was done by Flaherty Hood, and that study was done at your direction. And there's kind of some, there's some good news, bad news with that. The good news is, I think the city did a great job over the years in negotiating salaries and trying to keep the cost manageable for salary expenses. But over time with that, sometimes you can get kind of a skew of the market, and that's really what gives rise to the problems with the recruitment and retention, and I guess that was the reason for the study. And so with that, there has to be a little bit of a bump that goes with that to offset the fact that the salaries have been kept relatively flat and relative to the market over time. So with that, council's asked to consider adopting the recommendation, which was to drop 2 steps and add 1 step to the current pay scale, shift the entire scale up 4% to equalize it in 2022. So that gets you at par with market at 50% of market, so it gets you at average for the cities selected. And then the study also said additional 4% for January 1 to keep pace for 2023, and then 3% for 2024 and 3% for 2025. That was the recommendation of the study, but in implementation, the increase for 2023 was going to go to 3% instead of 4%. So that's identified in the resolution. So with that, in the direction that was provided, that became kind of the basis for negotiating with the LELS contract and kind of the basis for future discussions with AFSCME. So to try to get the city salary structure on par with communities that we're competing with for good employees. So with that, that gets us to that 50 to 60% level. From my experience, seems like these studies are happening all the time because of the marketplace for trying to get good employees. When I was in Monticello, we completed one in 2020 for the very same reasons that you're doing it now. And when I was in Watertown, they were doing the same thing, playing catch up, and in Becker as well. So this isn't unusual, this need to kind of try to catch up with other communities or catch up to the marketplace so that you can keep and retain. And all those communities did get to that similar 50% level when they made their change. There was some heartburn with that, but those examples are out there. So with that, unless council or staff has anything more to add, that's pretty much all I have to say on it.
Councilors?
So just to clarify, Jeff, obviously, we're looking at 8% from 2022, obviously, to 2023, and then in 3 years up that total to 13%, correct?
Right, over that time period.
And when you did this study, this brings us up to 50%. Obviously, there's other cities we could have gone higher in it, but that brings us at the actual mean to other cities, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. Thank you.
I was on the negotiating committee, if you want to call it that, but, I was kind of surprised that Flattery and Hood took over and basically did the comparable worth study, and that was the negotiation right there. There was no, and then the other member on the negotiating committee basically is adamant that that's how it has to be. I wasn't aware that that's where the marching orders of the council to go with the comparable worth study. I mean, I've negotiated contracts before, many, and that wasn't negotiation. That was just here's what the stats say, here's what you got to do. No consideration of budgets or anything, So, I mean, the whole process was stupid to me, as far as being on the council and having somebody dictate to us what we have to do with no consideration of budgets or what we have to do. The increase, I believe, just with this, that's why I asked that number before, Lori, in the last conversation we had, you proposed a 3% increase in the budget cycle, and this comes up to, 13% the first year, and the overall financial impact of the first year is $100,000. That's even with reducing it by when we paid off a debt levy. To me, and I mean, retention, whatever, I have no fear of that, but I'll just make it clear on that. That whole contract it wasn't negotiated. It was just given based upon no consideration of what the fiscal responsibility of us were for the city. Compared to other cities, we can only afford what we can afford. And then with the increase in valuation, you got a double whammy. You're gonna tax people right out of the city. Not all, but some. It's getting too high to live in St. Joe. That's gonna affect building down the road, business. I mean, business runs on mostly people from out of town, but, I'm just disgruntled by the whole process. That's all I just gotta say. And I would like to go back and negotiate this based upon what our budget says, not just because what a comparable worth says. And the cities that we're compared to weren't even close to what, in my opinion, of St. Joe.
I disagree. I think that the process.
It wasn't
there
meant for a debate.
can-
Hold
I
on.
get to speak now, thank you.
Yeah.
I believe that the process we did have a meeting, 2 of the counselors weren't there, but there was 3 of us. We did speak about it. We each had our opinion on it, and we came to an agreement, which that's when we went into, with negotiations with the support of Lori and our new administrator, and Flanagan Brandon. Am I saying it's wrong? I apologize. I believe we put our 2 cents in. You did put your 2 cents in, Bob. I heard your 2 cents, and I think that we did go back and forth. I was appreciative of hearing that some of it was similar with ours, but it still, we came down on points. We talked about it for actually longer than what they took. So I thought the process went quite well. I don't think there was hiccups in it at all. We have to go, we can't keep regurgitating. We did the steps that we were supposed to do, and I believe we followed them. And we do need to, if this is one area we need to uptick on, this is the area, is the salaries of our employees. Because then we won't bring in the appropriate, the professionals that we have in front of us. If we don't meet at least the mean, at least the average for them. And that's what we're doing. I believe that's what you were asking. John,
Without
correct?
consideration
Thank
for the
you.
taxpayer.
I'm a taxpayer too, and I
we all
also
are.
listen
We all
just
are.
as you hear them, Bob. I think it's very
I'm
important
not
that we
here
do
to argue
need
with you,
to.
I'm just stating the facts.
So am I.
I doubt it.
All right, Jeff, how much does the, and I'm gonna kind of tie 7 and 8 together. How much does consideration of base pay structure affect the LELS contract? Was it approved based on that
Yeah,
base pay
now,
structure?
here's where I slowly turn and look at Lori.
Well, I
'Cause
mean,
we-
there's
we're
other
ready-
language, there's
yeah.
other language in the LAS contract, but it seems like it's based on this structure more than anything else, right?
Based on the new base pay scale.
I mean, regardless of health insurance increases and all that, because I see there's health insurance increases, and we've done that before, but this seems like this is the one and residing issue in making it work.
That was
I'm not saying-
negotiated, the new
Yep.
base pay scale was presented to them, and they agreed to that at the 3% increase for 2023.
And I'm not necessarily saying that even if you increase it, we get better candidates, or we don't have turnover, because we still have to compete with the other areas that are gonna pay more with better benefits. But it gives us a starting point anyway. Is it responsible knowing that 75 or 80% of our budget is personnel costs?
So when we had
And
the,
I'm not trying to pick on LELS or.
no, just in general.
Just in general, this whole base pay,
It was discussed. We have the money is in the preliminary budget. So when we set the preliminary budget, we didn't know what the outcomes of negotiations and the Flaherty and Hood study, what they would be. The study is about, the final implementation is about $99,000 less than what the preliminary numbers estimated. So we're within the budget numbers. So when Brandon presented it at the public, or the special meeting that we had, going into some negotiation strategies as well, the council, he did mention that we did look at, make sure that it was within a budgeted number, make sure that, so that was one of the criteria that he wanted to consider. He selected more the mean, 50 to 60% of the mean. Initially, it was 60%, and out of that meeting, that came out that, well, we should shoot for 50% to try to bring it down, and that is what we went into negotiations with, to bring the proposed 4% down to 3% for 2023. So that was the action that the team had taken. Again, even with that, we're within what was budgeted for the preliminary. So I think that Brandon did take that into consideration. He did point that out, that and we place employees back on the step in closest to the pay that they're currently getting, but not less. So that was part of the consideration, is that we also have to be mindful to the taxpayers in that implementation.
Excuse me, Lori.
Yeah.
I talked to you the other day, and we talked about what the impact was, what isn't. We've been going at this for a while, and you told me it was $100,000 more at that time.
Less,
No, you said more.
maybe.
You told me
maybe
that to my face.
The preliminary budget is
Now it's
100,000
less,
more.
which I find kind of, disturbing.
Then maybe you and I didn't communicate on the same page. The preliminary budget is about 100,000, just under 100,000 more than what the comp study implementation shows.
While you're chewing on that. can
Well,
I
you're
ask-
talking about the comp study. I'm talking about the actual numbers from the preliminary versus implementing the two contracts, because one contract's gonna overflow into the other one. And I mean, I know that for a fact.
The comp study with the negotiated contracts is about, the preliminary budget is about 100,000 more than
Yeah, that's okay.
what the final numbers show.
Okay,
Okay.
so,
I got it,
Yeah.
so my speculation is, and I know nobody can really answer this, but if this gets us where we want, and we're gonna add like another public works person, another blah, 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 over the course of the years, how is our expanding budget gonna modify with this comp study? Where's it gonna end up? Kind of, how are we gonna maintain this with our current tax rate? Because I mean, the structure goes up, we add more employees, the personnel costs go up. I want somebody to put in a crystal ball and say, where are we gonna be in 3 years? Because we've put in a brand new base pay structure, and we're gonna add employees, we know we're gonna do that. Where does that lead us? Who's done the math on that?
I can tell you the
And I'm
full-time
looking-
police
I'm looking at you,
officer,
Lori, because you always do the math.
the full-time police officer that is, for the addition in 2023 is about 115,000 wages plus benefits, clothing,
Yeah.
get them equipped, it's about 115,000.
And that was
So just
put
to get-
into it, or that was?
No, that's
You were-
more
That's
than-
what we had built, that's where
You
we
built
started.
it
We started with that in the preliminary budget, that full-time officer, so we had inclination that the part-time was gonna be retiring at that point.
Okay.
So we did have the full-time police officer addition scheduled in the preliminary budget. And the cost with the implementation, with the comp study, with the LELS contract, it's about 115,000 in 2023 for that full-time officer.
So, another speculation question, if we don't approve this, what does that do with number 8? Which is LELS contract.
Well, presumably they go together. I mean, it is a market study, they go together, so you want to get it acted on.
I know.
Yeah, so they go together. And again, not, all due respect to Councilmember Loso, this wasn't a negotiation. You're right. It was a market adjustment.
Yeah.
So we had to go outside the boundaries of what you consider a classic negotiation to kind of wipe that slate clean, then start over with a new slate, hit those salaries at midpoint, and now you're good to go for at least 3 years, which I think is pretty wise on your part. So now you're locking in 3% for 2 consecutive years. We don't know what's going to happen with salary inflation. It could get worse than that. So it still is a relatively conservative approach to your salary structure. The point that Rick was making, I think, is really good as far as, okay, you got a growing city. You've got some demands. You've got some needs to generate some revenue. You need to do some economic development. You need to get that pump primed. And now you're hiring a police officer. You need a police officer too, but maybe you need to do something else in another area. So you're going to want to kind of balance your expenditures to try to, increase the revenues and not increase expenses too much, so you don't go one way or the other. Because that's the tough point of this town, is you've got such a great community, but there is a limited amount of revenue that you can generate through property tax. And you're right, I mean, overall, you look pretty good to the rest of the cities, but the city is taking a relatively good size of it. So you have to be really sensitive going forward. So I empathize with your problem, but it's only gonna get worse if, as far as staffing, you need to be able to hire qualified people. And it's a price of doing business to hit that midpoint, in my
Well,
mind.
They wouldn't be hired if they weren't qualified.
They wouldn't be, they wouldn't
Better
be, they
qualified.
would not be applying.
But they would also stay instead of leave, because
Well, who's
how
leaving?
many police officers, chief,
Oh,
have we lost,
yeah.
call it in 5 years, to other people? 3. I know, I've only been on the council for a year and a half, and I've said,
Yeah, how many retired?
None. Well, one,
Mayor so far is
Yeah.
Retired.
right,
Yep. Other ones have left for other areas.
Yeah,
for a better pay, right, and just even neighboring cities.
Well, we're
And
starting
even
to
this
be called a
doesn't-
training session here, station. That's kind of the mainstay I'm hearing. I would rather not be that.
And it doesn't matter if it's in law enforcement or public works there's a cost that's gonna go into training employees to get them
Right,
ready
but
for
not
somebody else.
constant.
But training
what
and
he's,
then leaving.
what he's saying is,
Right.
what she's saying is bring them here, let them do their thing, and then they go to Wade Park, or they
Right.
go to St. Cloud.
That's what we've seen, at
Yeah.
least with a couple.
And regardless, this doesn't stop the movement. It won't stop the movement. We're still gonna see turnover, we're gonna still see people leave and
yeah.
come. But at least, in my opinion, it will start us at potentially square one moving forward, along with the other negotiations we have coming up, so.
And to Jeff's point, again, we have to obviously offset it
I
too,
know.
because if you did have a crystal ball, we would know exactly what we need to do,
I
and then
know.
you could do that.
I know.
And Bob, in your time here, you know, how big has the city grown, you know, since 1990, right? And where we're at, and what's our trajectory?
Well, most of the city's growth was done in the 90s,
Right, but I mean,
and between 2000 and 2022, the growth hasn't been that substantial. You know, I mean, lately, we've been getting a lot of business remodels, rehabs of existing businesses. You know, to me, that's not growth, that's just remolding the,
or businesses going into older buildings too,
Yeah,
right? Or,
picture,
you know,
you know,
again, it's,
I mean, it's still tax-based money, it's still tax-based property. It's just that there's more of a entrepreneurship going on nowadays. You know, and, I mean, just by this, we increased our budget by $500,000 just for, you know, employees. You know, our growth rate, we grew what, 700 people, roughly, hypothetical number here, between 210 and 220. And that includes the annexation area. So we actually only grew 500 people,
what is,
population-wise.
you know, we saw at a work session too, that they're saying, or that they said, what, our population is supposed to go to 10,000 in 2027. Do we actually think that that's going to happen? And again, I mean, that seems like a substantial amount of people.
There's many projections, if you're around
But-
long enough, that'll project.
Well, right.
The demographers will project, you know, if this keeps continuing, and it's an overall movement within the state or the county or whatever, this is what they see is gonna happen. You know, I've never seen that population, prediction come true. I mean, we're supposed to be,
Yeah.
we should be up to, you know, 30,000 by past projections based upon
We've done
where
a
it's
couple,
going.
we've done a couple of projections that
Yeah.
haven't come
I
true,
mean,
but at the
right
same
now,
time,
we're not
at the
building-
same time, we're preparing for that.
Yeah, right
We
now,
have
we're
to.
not building homes,
We-
we're not attracting people, you know, that has to do with cost, inflation, everything else too.
Okay,
We're building
let's get back to adoption of the base pay structure, base pay scale.
I'd like to make a motion to approving the resolution 2022-62, approving 2023, 2024, 2025 base pay structure and implementation.
I'll second.
Motion second, resolution 2022-62, base pay structure, changes and implementation. Question, maybe the final one is, what happens in 2025, 2026? Do we have to repeat the act again, or how does it evolve continually? Do we know?
That's-
Maybe to some respects, we'll, you know, kind of see, I don't know if it's a huge contracted service or if the administrator can handle it with looking at market.
Okay.
Maybe kind of see what's happening with, movement of employees or something at the time. We can get a pretty good sense on just seeing job listings that's out there, like on League of Minnesota Cities, and
Like,
kind
kind
of
of
keep a pulse
kind of
on
the
it.
question is, we can adjust the pay structure for like 1 year and give an LELS contract of 3 years. We
You
don't-
can do that, yes.
We don't have to adjust the pay structure for 3 years.
After this, you're saying? for
No,
the
we
next
don't, we don't
contract.
have, to. We can do it right now for a pay structure of 1 year. An LELS contract can be 3 years long.
Correct.
It can be different
It can
things.
be different.
We do not have to negotiate a budget process for 3 years. We only have to get pay structure up for 1 year,
For
Is that true?
non-union,
for non-union.
that is correct.
And the union contract can take that base pay structure and say, I want a 5-year deal or a 1-year deal, correct?
I would rather see do this now and then do what you're suggesting in 3 years.
And the next contract is what you're saying.
Exactly. That's what I would suggest.
And my suggestion is that we hold LELS contracts separate from the pay structure
Right.
increase. That's my, anyway, vote and,
So this
motion.
is separate right now. Right? We're gonna
Yeah,
talk
motion
about-
and second on 2022-062. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Aye. Motion does not prevail. So my motion is to adjust this amended to 1 year. Resolution 2022-62 approving 2023 base pay scale. And that's it.
Say it again.
My motion is to amend this resolution to approve only a single year, 2023, which would be whatever the number is up there,
You're saying 3%.
3%. Well, whatever, aren't there some steps and lanes that go with this? Drop
Yeah.
one step, add one step, and then the 3%. And it's and all that goes up, but it's only for, whatever it is, keep pace for the 2023 3%. Along with shift the pay scale and
So
add
are
a
you
step
saying-
and,
Shift the entire pay scale
He wants to
4%
attach
here to
this to
2022. Is that what you're saying? And then an additional 3%, the
What?
one step in 2023.
yeah,
So you're saying no 24, 25 right now.
correct.
You're dropping 6%. So
Well,
you're saying,
I'm not baking that into the budget. That will have to be negotiated as the pay structure goes up, so will we have to modify our budget to make it match. LELS and ASME can negotiate their own scale and their own years in the contract. They do not have to, this is just for our base pay scale, non-union employees.
so for the non-union employees, I just want to make sure I'm hearing this right, as you're saying,
Okay.
shift up the entire scale 4%, correct,
Yep.
this year to 2022.
Yes,
And then next year,
This is for-
which would be January 1st, 2023, still 3%, which is still 7%, correct?
correct.
And then,
And then after that, the new city
Renegotiate
administrator
24,
will figure
25.
out,
I think, yeah,
where we're gonna be.
if I jump in, I mean, that sounds like a really kind of a normal thing.
It
I mean,
is,
to go extended years for non-union, yeah, you don't have to, and why not just respond to the environment as
So
it
the,
evolves?
because LLS and ASME will negotiate their own contract
Right.
with their own rate increase.
Now, the only problem you can get with that is that when you get into pay equity and you start seeing a divide between your union and non-union, that could be an issue, but you can address that annually so that you don't get
With
split
proper
too far.
counseling.
Yep.
Yeah, and proper.
so really, we're covering this year, we're covering next year, and then we're gonna renegotiate 24, 25.
Yeah, our new city admin will come in and take
Yeah.
a
That's why
snapshot.
on the staff level.
Yes,
So pretty much taking 13% for the 3 years and just doing 7% right now
yes,
for the two,
We aren't
for
dealing
this
with
year and next year.
LALS or ASME.
yeah.
Which is more of
This
a
is-
happy medium, and you can renegotiate 24, 25.
And it doesn't stop
For the pay
it doesn't stop the union negotiations at all.
Okay.
So there's a
Second.
motion and second on that. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-1. I think we're on number 8 now.
So instead of a trifecta, we'll.
All right.
So 2 years instead of 4 years is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
we got them on the base pay, we got them up to speed. All new contracts, well, these contracts are gonna be effective, whatever the length is, but the new city administrator will come in and take a snapshot, and take a look at where we're at. So this is the LALS contract, we negotiated this, correct?
Correct.
And this has nothing to do necessarily with base pay, this is a 3-year deal.
It's
Right.
predicated on base pay, though, the actual.
But that goes into effect,
But
right?
that goes into effect, right?
Okay.
I won't go through the details of it if you don't want me to. It's pretty much spelled out. There was the base pay scale, as we've already discussed. Workday, there's some flexibility added to the language. It's more housekeeping language. Vacation, there was also more housekeeping language there as well to make it more understandable as to how to calculate it and use it. Accrued sick leave, we're giving employees the ability to use accrued sick leave during their first 6 months of employment. That's different. And then some increases to health insurance. 2023 is at $1,450, up from $1,350 in 2022, and then up another $150 in 2024 to $1,600, and then another $150 in 2025. There were some housekeeping modifications to make it more understandable, readable, and so on. And that's pretty much all I have on that item. Bob may have some questions on the budget impact, but those are for Lori.
Yeah.
Okay.
Counselors?
Okay.
What is the number?
So, item 9 here,
Oh, we're on 8.
We're on 8 yet there, boys.
we're still on 8.
Yeah.
Well, this
We're
is
looking-
8. We were just on 7.
No, I'm normally the one that gets lost, so. Item 8, so I'm gonna make a motion to approve 2022-63, approved labor agreement.
I
LAS.
second.
One second.
Motion and second.
Sorry.
Resolution 2022-63, I have a single question on, it comes to vacation. At one point, and I'm not sure who negotiated the language, at one point there was like how much you could accrue, use or lose kind of thing, and how much we had to keep on the books kind of thing. Did that ever come up? Because I'm trying to limit it to,
Yeah, the bargaining agreements don't, or the LELS contract did not change that. So the max that they can carry over is
Yeah.
100 hours.
okay, very good, thank you. Questions, counselors? Motion and second, resolution 2022-63, approving LELS contract. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-1. That was number 8, we're on 9 now.
Mhm.
STM, IMST, short-term disability.
That'll be me, just trying to get to it on the agenda here. In 2022, this was presented actually to I believe to the Personnel Committee, to look at short-term disability. We've had some requests from employees. A couple contracts ago, it was negotiated into one of the bargaining units, but it couldn't carry forward because individually we didn't have enough people sign up for it. However, we've seen some impacts to employees, whether it be like childbirth, not having any short-term disability for maternity leave, paternity leave for fathers, adoption leave, those types of things. If there's injuries that are not workers' comp, it doesn't provide for, we don't have a short-term disability plan to cover, a period that you might need to be out of work for a month or two. We do have a long-term disability plan that kicks in after 90 days of being off work. So that's been in place for a long time. The short-term disability, the city had fell back on the sick leave accrual for short-term disability to cover that 90 days. The problem is when an employee starts, they only, at max, they can earn 96 hours their first year, and they earn hours each pay period, so it's not given to them upon hire. It's earned as, each pay period. So it'll take a few years before that employee would reach 90 days worth of sick leave in order, if they needed to take, say, a 12-week maternity leave. And that's assuming that they take no sick hours, for a few years. And that's just not reasonable. That's not what happens. We don't really have an employee group that takes extensive time off for that, but We wanted to be able to accommodate that, and really the only way that we can get a short-term disability policy is to do it as an employee benefit provided to all employees. They also look at the number of post-licensed police officers compared to the rest of the group. Last year, that was one of the issues why we couldn't present and move forward with that, is because we were one officer too many compared to the rest of the employee group. So we just missed that percentage, but the insurance underwriters were gonna give us an exception that after 14 days, they would let short-term disability kick in. Now, going into our, the quote for this year, we meet that qualification, so sick leave our short-term disability would kick in after 7 days and go until the 90 days. But again, the only way to offer that benefit is to provide it as an employer benefit to all employees. Otherwise, we can't meet the thresholds that are in place to meet the short-term disability requirements.
And I'm gonna show, I'm sorry, can we ask questions?
I guess.
Are you still- Is this like please forgive me, but like an Aflac kind of thing, in a sense?
It would be,
I mean,
say
that's
you
what
broke your leg and you needed to be out for 2 months while that healed and going through therapy and all that. It provides for leave up to 60% of your wages. The insurance would kick in and pay that difference.
Yeah, that,
For the-
Aflac does that, yeah.
Aflac's a little different. Like if you have Aflac and you have an accident, you can be reimbursed time, and for the injury, they have a certain
We
calculation.
use it,
This is just
yeah.
short-term disability to cover wages while you need to be out of work for whatever reason.
It just depends.
Is this something an employee can opt in or opt out of?
Right.
It would have to be an employer benefit that all full-time employees would receive, just like our long-term disability. Otherwise we can't meet the underwriting of the insurance.
What do you guys think?
Oh, short-term disability? I love it. I think everybody should have it. I mean, I didn't have short-term disability, so when my kids were born, I had to go to the hospital and back to work. So that was
You
just
got
one
time off to
example.
go to the hospiel?
I did, like after I got done working.
Well, it's just different because compared to state to corporate, like corporate, you get it, we don't get offered. So we have to go get it. So that's why we have, my husband and I have Aflac. So yes, I agree, it is
And
wonderful,
for our corp,
but we have to pay for
yeah,
it.
it's our same thing too.
A lot
where
of
we can opt in
corporations
or
do
opt
have,
out,
Right.
Yeah.
where-
like paid family leave, like for maternity and
FMLA,
paternity,
FMLA,
and we
yeah.
don't have
All
that.
that,
Okay.
We allow members to take up to, a certain time off or something for a birth of a child or adoption of a child, but we don't have a paid leave for those instances. So this would help
Okay.
those employees in that
Alright.
situation.
I move accepting the UNUM short-term disability quote and adding a full-time benefit package for city employees.
Second,
It's the motion and second on short-term disability acceptance. Further questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
There's no cost involved with this.
Yeah, there is.
$4,970.
It's in your packet.
I didn't see that.
Budget impact.
I'm not sure if you went yea or nay there, Bob.
Nay, nay.
Nay.
Okay, I'm okay with it.
4-0, it prevailed.
4-0.
4-0. 4-0, sorry, not 4-0. Okay, item 10. RFP. This is you,
Okay,
Jeff.
this is mine. As we discussed at a recent workshop, there's a need to take a look at the current city pay equity program. And I'll spare the details on how the current one's developed, and to what extent there may be issues with it, but it's really a foundational document to your organization. It needs to be right, it needs to be trusted by everyone within the organization, it needs to be understandable, and it needs to, staff and council need to buy into the program, and it appears that there may be a deficit there as far as the credibility of the current methodology and the current understanding, and it just seemed like that, to create that kind of foundational understanding and ability to actually use it as a tool for your organization, that it needs to be right and it needs to be improved. So with that, this is a cost item, but the proposal here at this time is just to go out for proposals. I'll send it out to different firms. We'll see what comes back, how much it costs, and you'll have another chance to evaluate it, and then we'll go from there. So that's all we're doing at this time. It's just authorization to proceed. I provided a draft document that will be modified to fit, and we'll go from there, get that out the door as soon as I can.
I'll move to approve an RFP being sent out to select vendor to update pay equity program.
Second.
Motion and second approving the RFP for pay equity. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. 11. Chief?
Because, she's been kind of all over the agenda here tonight.
Lori meeting.
Yeah. So, this request from council is kind of a two-part, request. First is gonna be that, Richard, our officer, part-time officer, who's worked for us for 17 years, is gonna be resigning. I suppose I'm not allowed to disclose his age, but he's given us a good amount of time, let's just put it that way, and we wish him well into his retirement. He's made December 15th his last official day. He also works for the cities of Avon and Annandale, also as part-time officers, and he is planning on retiring. I don't think he so much wants to retire, but I think his wife wants him to retire. It's time to start enjoying some life. So with that, I regretfully will accept his resignation that he had given me. So with that comes a discussion of what do we do with his remaining hours that he definitely does fill a good hole in our gap. And as we discussed at the last work session, John had brought up a couple different points about do we do it at the beginning of the year? Do we wait halfway through the year? Ultimately, it's gonna be a council decision, but like I explained to John, or Councilmember Hazen, was there's a certain amount of time to advertise for the position, there's a certain amount of time to recruit for it and train, and if we're gonna have some of Richard's duties fulfilled before spring, when the students come out of hibernation, we need to get going sooner than later. I did have, for the council as well, Rick had talked about earlier about having that crystal ball. I had Mary pull together some interesting numbers, some of which are predicted to 2025, but the numbers that we do know go back to 2015. You start looking at the amount of calls that 8 officers were handling back in 2015. We were at a little over 2,400 ICRs. This year, we're fairly confident because of our numbers already where we're at. We're gonna hit 4,100 ICRs. We're gonna just about double where we were at about 7 years ago. And she did do a good job about putting together some upper confidence levels, lower confidence levels about where we're forecasted. And in the next 2 years, if we're entering into 2023, over the next 3 ICR years, we're gonna more than double where we were at in 2015. So at this point here, just because of where we've been at with trying to get part-time officers, when I started here, one thing I didn't include in for the council as well is when I started here back in 2002, we were a 4-person part-time city. We had 4 part-time officers that revolved in and out all the time. And over the years, as we've added full-time officers, we've reduced those number of hours, so lowering the amount of part-time officers. So Richard was our last part-time officer. Cities of Sartell, Wade Park no longer even use part-time officers anymore. It's expensive to outfit them, train them, and then send them off down the road, especially with the climate we're in right now. So it'd be my recommendation that we look to try to replace Richard's position with a full-time officer and go that route. And I think I've pretty much hit all the topics I was gonna hit. Any questions on that, I can certainly address.
So,
Questions? Yeah?
yeah,
Go ahead.
budgeted for 2023 is 115,000, correct? But kind of like what I asked at the work session is, by the time, let's say we adopt this, say we want to hire a full-time police officer, you start looking, can you kind of go over where you said if the time frame of when that person gets in here, is that why you said the half-year budget would be about 59? You expecting if this is approved tonight and you start the search, and you hire someone on, that person would be starting, give me a time frame if it goes right away.
Well, I was kind of banking on with this base pay scale that the council just accepted for the LELS conference, even putting out a desirable, amount that somebody might actually apply for our city. Because the last couple,
Yep.
pools, we haven't had a lot.
Correct.
So assuming that we would make this position started taking applications around January 1st, it's usually about 2 weeks worth of applications, then you're gonna go out and do a background on the individual, you got interviews and everything else, psychologicals. It's generally about a month before the individual even gets into a uniform.
Okay.
And then we have 2 months worth of training that person. So the earliest that this officer, if we were gonna advertise for the position on January 1st, would probably hit the street would be towards the end of March, after St. Patrick's Day, we'd be looking at April 1st.
Okay.
If you delay it halfway to the end of the year, or to half of the year, you'll likely not even hit Labor Day weekend when you'd start the whole process as well, so.
Okay, thanks, chief.
Is this, so then we're bringing a new one, a full one on next year, and then we're adding this one then too, correct?
Yep.
This is if we're-
This is the
okay.
full-time
This is a
position.
full-time
This
position.
is the
Yes.
full-time?
This is.
Oh, okay,
So getting rid of the part-time and
got it. I thought we were gonna.
2 halfers. Well, I move to accept the resignation and authorize hiring of a full-time police officer for 2023.
A second.
Motion and second, resignation, acceptance, and new full-time police officer. Questions or concerns? I have just a single question. The projections that whomever put together is expecting a 18%, 20% increase in the next 3 years. I mean,
Yeah, I
is that
haven't-
is that based on just the natural growth from 15 to 22?
I'm gonna say yes on that part of it. Just looking at where we've been at so far, I mean, from obviously 2015 to where we've got in 2022, we've increased whatever
Yep.
percentage that is. And I don't know exactly where we get to from 2022, but, I mean, we're already at double where we were at in 2015. So whatever program it is, I don't know that, however
No.
she comes up with that one.
I'm
Yep.
just guessing, she took 15 to 22 and said, here's the average, and just calculated it all the way through with a high value, low value, so
I'd like-
that was
I'd-
my only question.
Yeah, I'd like to see, based on the last 2-3 years, how you base those numbers on.
Well, you can do the
Wait,
same thing.
you could do the
Because, I
same
mean,
thing,
the
but
further back you go, the more skewed that stat gets, in my opinion.
Yeah, the smaller the number gets too, because, yeah, I mean, we went all the way back to when I started in 2002, and we were at less than 1,800 ICRs. I mean, it obviously keeps going down smaller the farther back you get towards 2000. So we just did a 10-year average, if you will, or a 10-year
I
look.
like to see a kind of, well, if you do a 10-year average, I like to see a 10-year average on what those ICRs were for.
Sure.
What the crime stats are going, what the crimes are being escalated, what are just onesie, twosie every 5-10 years, and,
Medicals.
Yeah,
You're gonna hear a lot of medicals.
so,
yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
quickly, I just did the math, it
Yep.
just seems pretty accurate to me, but, okay. Motion and second, resignation and new police officer. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hey,
Motion prevails 3-1. Fire contract. This is just the extension?
It's just an extension.
can we put a definite date on that, so
I
it
think
doesn't
we-
get
we
drag-
did,
drag
right?
out
We-
forever?
This-
We got it March. We're gonna go
March
for it, we'll get
31st.
it done. We get through
March
this budget,
31st,
we got
okay.
some time now, so,
Okay.
um,
Didn't catch that date.
is that, yeah.
We'll go
I mean,
hard.
What number is this for us for extending this?
3.
Three.
this is the third.
3, maybe?
What are,
This would be the.
Yeah,
This is the
what's-
second time.
Oh,
second
okay.
time,
It's the
okay.
second, okay, we'll
What
go.
are-
We had to extend in July, and we did to the end of the year,
The end
okay,
of the
okay,
year, okay.
okay.
Can I ask, what are the major hangups? Do we know?
Figuring out valuation of assets. The contract says if you're gonna buy out, if the township buys us out or the city buys the township out, it's gonna be based on the valuation of the assets at the time of that sale or whatever that buyout. So it's just determining what that valuation needs to be.
So the longer we go, the depreciation of it, so.
Yeah.
But we're using
Another
it though.
year.
I see what you're doing.
We're
Okay.
milking it.
I couldn't resist.
Motion to consider, or to amend the fire contract negotiation period
I'll
to
second.
March 31st. Motion and second, extending contract negotiation to March 31st. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Finally, engineering. We should put you at the top, shouldn't we? So you can get out of here. Woo-woo.
I'll move on item 13. Approve.
You
Already?
don't wanna hear what he has to say?
Yeah, don't, he's got a presentation.
Yeah.
Oh,
Don't you? No?
My recollection is that
We did this
Still, we
already?
kinda did it.
we added the downtown alley near the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is what we talked about when
Okay.
we were looking at, right?
I don't remember the
It's just to approve.
entirety
Yeah,
of the
Bob,
discussion.
you added
from
this
last
right
time.
here,
It
didn't
was
you?
Northland Addition,
Bob,
First Street
you added
East
this, didn't you,
Extension,
Bob?
Walk New Oven Alley, Ash Street East, Second Avenue
Yeah.
Northeast, and Gumtree.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, and
Okay.
I think the rest of the scope of the project was discussed, it was just the addition of the
The
alley.
addition to the alleyway that you
The
wanted to
addition
look
of
at.
the
Gave you a chance, man. Just telling you.
Well,
It was your stage.
Hey, Bob, I'll second Bob's. move.
Motion and second, resolution 22060, ordering prep and report on improvements. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion does carry. What's next?
Engineer reports, but,
What was that?
That
Yeah,
probably
No.
pretty much
reports.
covers it.
yep, that
Oh,
covers it.
sorry.
Pretty much it.
but yeah, I don't, I have nothing else to report unless anybody
Nothing else
has
to report.
any
'cause
questions.
It was this.
Oh, that was
What we
it?
did, and then engineering.
Okay.
Everything else.
So,
Mayor and council.
15. I just have a couple of things. So there's good news, since I've been serving on the League of Minnesota Cities Board of Directors. St. Joe will receive a dividend of about $16,000. But just by serving on the board, those board members, cities receive a dividend from the League of Minnesota City Trust Fund. And so I informed Lori that, Dave told me and I told Lori. We have a meeting on Wednesday, right, Chief, with students? Okay. The deans and the security of CSBSJU. On the 8th, Jeff and I are going down to the St. Cloud Chamber Government Day. It's the third year in a row they do this. They have legislators and GSDC and some other people in the audience, and we actually go over kind of bullet points of what we're working on, our projects, some of the legislation that we want to see at the next session. And just really, it's a kind of a free-for-all. Every city does their own thing on what they're working on. Cub Scouts are coming in on the 13th. You're gonna have somebody here for the tour? Okay. And they just want to talk about, they want to actually come in here and talk about what we do and what the services in the building. And I told Chief to be here because they really like the police side of it. And then on the 14th, you guys should all write this down, League of Minnesota Cities Regional Meeting is going to be here in St. Joe. I haven't heard from Madison about how the response rate, but she said, I mean, I've been contacted by a couple of people, so they're confident there'll be a good attendance here. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon on December 14th. So, just by caution, we should announce that there may be a gathering of the flock here. And that is all I have. Counselors, do you have anything?
Just the winter walk.
Oh, sorry,
That
yeah,
was-
yeah. Terrible wind that night.
That was the most interesting with the new board and the support of the city. Thank you so very much for everything that all of you have done. It's been a long haul, but I think we had a good turnout, even with the weather.
I do too.
So, yes, very cool. But, yeah, I think mostly positive, and hopefully you thought the patrol did well, Dwayne?
I wasn't here for it.
Okay. You didn't hear anything negative, I guess.
So
put it
it
that
really
way.
well then.
Yes. What?
They went great.
Okay, good.
No complaints.
Yeah, right.
Anything else, counselors, staff?
Yeah, they shop small crowd.
Oh, yeah, that was another good one.
Yeah, that was,
Fall on Saturday.
That really went
Yep.
well, and it
Yeah.
was much better weather too. But
Yeah.
right.
I saw people hopping on and off the little minibus they had going around, so.
Good deal.
I don't know the numbers or anything like that, but I did see a lot of people in town that day.
I would move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Yeah.
14, 3 o'clock.